Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here just on account of we don't want to run short on time. Let me help you, okay? Because some of the input that we get back from freshmen who are in college now, I haven't had anybody come back and say, I am so glad that I just slacked off and didn't pay attention and didn't do anything. There's always going to be a first time for everything. I'm still waiting for that student to show up. But we want you to be the haves and not the have-nots, okay? So, I want you to go and look at page 228. So that equation in that blue box, how or why would that look familiar? So, yes, it's just the opposite of photosynthesis. So, we could presume that there's a lot of aspects that are similar to photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So, if you looked up at the board, which one is photosynthesis? Which one is cellular respiration? Okay? And for a couple reasons, we thought, well, maybe if I put this up here in green, that would be a pretty good clue or indication. This must be from plants because it's green. I suppose you could say that. So in the thylakoid space, that's where all this ATP is made and burned for energy. Okay? And then, okay, so we see some similarities then. ETC, what does that mean to you? Electron transport chain. That's right. So it's how these ATP molecules are made is fairly similar, and when they're broken apart is going to be similar. But what we want to do is look at glycolysis on page 2. Well, maybe the last paragraph on 228. Just follow along, please. Cellular respiration occurs in two main parts, glycolysis and aerobic respiration. So, which one is which? Aerobic respiration, you need to have what? Oxygen, and it will give you energy. So what about glycolysis? Is that aerobic or anaerobic? Aerobic or anaerobic? It's anaerobic because you don't need oxygen for glycolysis. The first stage, glycolysis, is an anaerobic process. Anaerobic processes do not require oxygen. Aerobic respiration includes the Krebs cycle and electron transport and is an aerobic process. Aerobic processes require oxygen. Cellular respiration with aerobic respiration summarized in figure 11. So glycolysis, even if we didn't go any further, we already know it does not take any oxygen. Okay? So on figure 12, what is our starting molecule? And even in that presentation yesterday, what is our starting molecule in glycolysis?
Glucose.
It's glucose. Okay? What is our end product in glycolysis? And this was and we talked about this yesterday too. For those of you who maybe had watched it, if you had time. I don't know. I see there's a whole bunch of views on there, like 12, or maybe 8 to 12. And if we don't know, what is your end product in glycolysis? What's at the very bottom? Say that again. Are you saying pyruvate? Yes. Okay. The reason at the very end of glycolysis, this is produced. Okay? Can the body do anything with this? The answer is yes. Because remember, in this anaerobic process, is this needed? Is that needed? No, not in an anaerobic process. Because what happens is this gets converted to this, to lactic acid. Okay? So then, how many people have ever experienced soreness in their muscles? This process is why. Okay? Because where does the body need oxygen all the time? There's 3 parts we talked about. Well, it goes through the trachea. The lungs is a type of tissue. It's what drives the lungs. It's below them. It's a muscle. Starts with a D. Diaphragm is 1. What's this funny pumping muscle? The heart. That's 2. And you're thinking about this. Your brain consumes a massive amount of oxygen. So those 3 spots are number 1. See, we don't want you to miss this concept, all right? Because if we miss it once, we might miss it again. Both of you. Okay, so then what happens at the very end here, this is starting to build up in your muscles. You do produce ATP from that. So this is how you get your energy. So if we have 4 ATP in this process, do we get 4 from it? No, you're shaking your head. No, that is correct. It breaks down to 2 because this process takes 2 ATP. So you have to take 2 away. Okay? So then in this process, how do we get energy from ATP? It was in a little diagram that we made, probably 3 or 4 times by now. Yeah, but what type of shapes do we use? Yeah. So then, if we're talking about ATP, how many triangles is that? Okay. So the simplest way to visualize that is these are all individual phosphate molecules. So from this ATP, this gets broken apart. When that bond breaks, what do we get from that? We get energy. Okay. So then, once this is broken off, okay, and we can still bond to that later, there's something very specific here that will form that bond. It's an enzyme that does that. And it's one that we needed spelled back there. ATP synthetase. Rubisco takes part in plants, but this ATP synthetase, okay, that forms that bond in there, okay. If it's broken apart, you get energy. ATP synthetase will bond the 2 back together to make ATP. And this is just a continual cycle that happens over and over and over again. So any questions on this process of glycolysis? The main things we want you to know, it's 1 molecule of sugar, pyruvate or pyruvic acid gets converted to lactic acid, and you only get 2 ATP from it. You get 4, but it takes 2 to run that process. That's why you got to subtract 2.
What's the one that gets 36?
That is the Krebs cycle. We're not that far yet. Can we erase this? Okay? Okay. So now, back to now glycolysis on page 229. Glucose is broken down in the cytoplasm through a process of glycolysis. 2 ATP molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of NADH. We're not too concerned about that. ATP is what we're concerned with. Okay? First, 2 phosphate groups derived from 2 molecules of ATP are joined to glucose. Notice that some energy, 2 ATP required to start the reactions that will produce energy for the cell. Okay, the carbon, we're not too concerned about that. Then at the very end, last, the 2 3-carbon compounds are converted into molecules. At the same time, 4 molecules of ATP are produced. But it takes 2 to run that process. That's why you only get a net gain of 2. Okay? We're just going to spend a little bit of time on the Krebs cycle, and then that will be it for today. Okay, Krebs cycle. Glycolysis is a net result. Okay, I physically just can't talk over you. All right, I just can't. All right. Glycolysis has a net result of 2 ATP and 2 pyruvate molecules. Most of the energy from glucose is still contained in the pyruvate. In the presence of oxygen, pyruvate is transported into the mitochondrial matrix where it is eventually converted to carbon dioxide. The series of reactions in which pyruvate is broken down into carbon dioxide is called the Krebs cycle. Okay? This cycle is also referred to as the citric acid cycle. Okay? So it has all those steps of the Krebs cycle, which we are not concerned about. We are not going to read through all of that. It's just too confusing. This is not that upper level of a science class. Okay? On the bottom of 230. The bottom of 230.
What are you guys passing around?
In aerobic respiration, electron transport is the final step in the breakdown of glucose. It also is the point at which most of the ATP is produced. Okay? High energy electrons and hydrogen ions from that molecule, that nicotenzene dihydrogenate, produced in the Krebs cycle are used to convert ADP to ATP. Okay? But how does that take place? ADP to ATP. We had it written up here no more than 5 minutes ago. How does ADP get converted to ATP? ATP synthetase. I want you to look, okay, on page 231, okay, in figure 14. You see inside that box, okay? You see ATP synthetase in there, lower right-hand corner. Does everyone see that? Okay? If you back up to page 225, okay, and this is that figure 8, it's visualizing electron transport, okay? Find letter E. Letter E is up over here. Okay? Find letter E. All right? It says, when protons move across the thylakoid membrane through ATP synthetase, ADP is converted to ATP. So the similarities are the same, we could say, for plants as opposed to animals. Okay? Where do the electrons come from in photosynthesis? It was the major thing that we said that gets split in photosynthesis. Say that again. Water. Okay? So in plants, this water gets broken apart. Okay? So we could say there's a whole bunch of these. Okay? These hydrogens are positively charged. So what would happen to these molecules of oxygen? Does oxygen just leave out to the... Oxygen can't alone. It has to be together. You have to have two of these. That's why we say oxygen then will leave and be released to the atmosphere. These are driving the electrons. Okay?
It's not just us. Why are you staring at us?
Who else should I be looking at then?
Everyone's talking.
Okay, well, I guess we can be done for today if it's everyone else. Okay. All right. Now all of a sudden we're quiet. That's what it takes. Okay. So we just said know the similarities between the electron transport chain in photosynthesis, the electron transport chain in respiration. Okay. That they both have an electron transport chain. It's just that plants get the source from water. Animals and humans get the source from the Krebs cycle. Okay. So, last thing, we know that tomorrow one student is gone, 2 students are gone, 3 are gone,
Boys is going to be gone, I think. Right, Phyllis? Yeah.
4 are going to be gone. If you're gone tomorrow, we just have to have you get this documented and made up next week.
Isn't the test today?
Today?
Yeah.
In 20 minutes?
I thought it was supposed to be today.
It was supposed to be, but that's why when we look over there on Friday, it says exam chapter 8.
Why don't you move it to when people are going to be gone, when everyone's here today?
It was my understanding that volleyball players were going to be gone today.
How many
If you want to be mad at me, be mad at me. Okay? Take your frustration out on me.
I'm not mad.
Okay. Yes.
Can we go to our class and I want to frost our cookies?
If we don't want bonus questions, sure.
Frick, never mind, I do.
No, you don't.
Oh.
No, that guy likes it.
Okay, so in case you can't read that, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi both make up the Blank Brothers. Ask anyone who's my age or older, they'll know what that means. Hungry Like a Wolf is a single by this group in the 1980s. Okay?
Mr. Gross, Mr.
That's the idea. All right, so exam tomorrow. Those that are not here, you just need to make this up so we can document it. And another reason we didn't get into is because we needed to go over this before we took the exam. Those of you who put the time into this, you're going to be much better off, we hope. Okay, we'll catch up to you next time.